My name again is Jennifer Davis. I'm a senior asset manager for BH, and we are the 13th largest apartment property manager in the U.S. We manage 70,000 units. We're also we're the 12th largest manager, the 13th largest owner of apartments. So not only are we on the management side of the day-to-day of running all these apartment units, but we also own a lot of those, mostly a piece of every one of them we manage. So what we wanted to do is, and I should share the slides. We started in 1993 as a mom and pop. Our founder bought a couple properties, thought this would be a fun thing to do. He left legal practice and started buying. And since that time, we've grown from a couple properties to over 236 in our portfolio right now. We're always trying to find a way to maximize performance for our property owners, provide a very nice living arrangement and circumstance for our residents, but then also, like I said, we're not only managing, but we're also an owner with investors. We have 14 active investment funds that buy real estate. So we have internal customers, which are our residents and also our other departments. We have external customers being our investors and our residents as well. So what we needed to do is find a new way of doing our budget process. And I'll walk you through the challenges we had with the old way. But as I mentioned, it's been 8 months. We had Valerie from Tesser come out and help us in January. We had to learn what Quantrix was. None of us had used it. We'd done a demo with Mike and his team. But really, it was hit the ground running January 9th and have it ready by the end of July. We were able to accomplish that, which is really exciting. So the way that the old way worked, and let me just give a shout out to Jason Knotts. He's here, wave to everybody. Jason built our old Excel template, and it's fabulous. It's what you would imagine from a really good Excel workbook. 35 tabs. I can't even count how many formulas are in there. And one of the issues, of course, is we needed to change the mindset for everybody. We're not going to do it the old way anymore. So Jason became our builder. He's our modeler. I did the math and the logic behind how we needed it to work. What were the formulas supposed to be? What are the metrics that drive this number? And then we also have our data guru, Mike Stevenson, who's in our Dallas office, and he does the SQL Server, set up the data warehouse, did the links with our property management and HR software to bring in all those little pieces. So let's talk about some of the challenges that we had with the old way. As you can imagine, it was a 20 or 30 tab worksheet with way too many formulas. And our user base, mostly property managers or people that have been promoted up through the property management ranks, the regional managers and AVPs, RVPs, these are people. They're not spread heads like Jason and I. They're not comfortable in a 30-tab workbook. And even if you consider if the worksheet itself goes beyond your screen and down and there's lots of scrolling and you have too many inputs, just overwhelming for someone who's not comfortable in Excel. And so we had way too much data entry. We've got 1,500 GL codes in our account tree, and probably 300 of those are relevant to our operating budget itself. So we're asking people who aren't necessarily comfortable in Excel to go in and make sure they're budgeting each of those GL codes for each month of the year in the right place with the right number, and don't forget to reference back to your historicals so you can look at trends. And those are someplace else. It was just very cumbersome for people that weren't comfortable with Excel. Too easy to miss an input, all the things that we all know that Excel, some of the issues we have there. So far too much data entry. When we needed to do an update, if there was a formula change, or if we got word from our departments that, oh gosh, that one software we're using actually costs this much per month per property. Well, if we had already issued the template out to the teams, Jason had to go out and open 235 individual Excel workbooks, make that formula change, save it to the server, get it back out. And you can imagine that people would make their own changes and, oops, I forgot and saved it on my desktop. And then they're their boss would review the wrong version, or the wrong version would end up in accounting hands at the end of the year. So all of those types of troubles. The annual build-out process. So consider 235 properties. Each of them needs about a week to create their budget outside of the office. They actually go to a budget camp, lock themselves away in a room, and it's a week where they're not paying attention to my property. So as an owner, an investor, we would hear, oh, I'm so sorry, they can't handle that problem right now because they're at budget camp. Don't want to hear that. You need to have it more seamless. It needs to be a lot less time and a lot more thought rather than just data entry. Another problem that we had was bringing in the actuals from the historicals. Obviously, you want to do your forecasting on as current of data as possible. So we would release the budget template in July, and then Jason would, once the actuals for August are ready, Jason would go into 235 models, reload the most recent monthly financials, and then do it again in September and October and November. And so incredibly time consuming and so inefficient for everybody. We also needed something that was more accessible for the reviewers. We've got several regions. We're located, we call it the Smile, from Richmond, Virginia, down through the southeast and up along the west, and then Colorado and the Midwest in the middle. We've got people across the country. We need a way that they can review together with their supervisor, even if they're not in the same place. It needs to be able to be reviewed with an owner, even if the owner's in Chicago and the property's in Nashville. We don't necessarily want to have to travel to present the budget, so a cloud-based solution was very important to us. So we are on the cloud. We've got, like I said, around 300 users, and we went all in with Quantrix. Not only did we do the desktop, but we've also got the cloud-based system. Next page. All right, so this just gives a quick example of, we've got a couple codes of our GL here, just a couple. And the yellow was the inputs, and these black ones are or the brown are, it says GAAP, do not use. This particular client was a tax-based accounting owner versus a GAAP-based accounting owner. So the codes change by owner. And so some budgets needed to be GAAP-based and use these GL codes, and others needed to not use those codes. So on this page alone, I've got 2 active GL codes in our accounting, and it's 34 inputs that this property manager would have to put in just for 2 items of capital investment. So again, way too many inputs, and let's hope that they pick the right GL code. They may not necessarily do that because they're not accountants, they're property managers, they're people. So this is where we start with our budget. This is the first thing our property managers see, and you can see it's much more exciting than the previous page. It's got embedded video on all of the key areas. We've got embedded training videos that are designed for the user, for the property manager, for the person who's not an accountant but knows their property better than anybody. It just walks them through what are the steps to budgeting these line items. So we've got embedded training videos. This is my favorite, import financials. When this property manager goes in and wants to update their budget, they get to click the import financials button. It directly hooks into our property management software, grabs the most recent every single GL code that's out there for that property, pulls it into our data warehouse through a SQL server, and then lands in their budget. So Jason doesn't have to do this anymore. The property managers do it, and it works out great. And then we also have an update property information, which I'm sure you guys can't read from the way back, but it allows us to update all sorts of metrics for the property. So when they're in there, one-stop shopping, they can let us know if there's a change that needs to be made, if they see an error with any of their property data. And then again, trying to gear it toward the user. You've got the custom formatting. We've got encouraging words here. It's okay, keep going. This is where you go. We've got buttons that guide you through the best process, the best flow to create your budget. And just try to make it more of a, everybody's more comfortable with the internet now than they used to be, and the people that are using this budget are guided through what's the best way to do this, and then they don't have to guess. Should I start with my unit mix? Should I start with my capital? Where do I do runs? Walks them right through it. Okay. So I touched on a couple of these. Complete control over the format. Again, we wanted something that would work for our user group. Instead of being an Excel workbook that is guided or geared more toward accountants and analytical minds, something that works more for someone who's managing a property and knows their property and visually and procedurally walks them through the best way to do that. Control over metrics and how they relate. It's like what all of us are trying to do is access our data in the best way possible for better decision making. So when we looked at the logic and the structure of the template itself, we wanted to take some of the assumptions out of what we already know is in the data. The data can tell us so many pieces of this puzzle. For example, if we know that we had 200 move-outs at this property, and we know that cleaning the carpet and housekeeping and fixing the plumbing and painting the walls generally costs this much per move-out at that property, we can apply that going forward at an inflationary growth and take some of the math out of the hands of the property manager and give them a place to start. We did allow them places to make overrides, so if they don't like our number, or if there's something specific to this property, they have a place where they can change it, but it gives them a starting point so that they're not bogged down with, gosh, I don't know how to do this formula, or I'm not sure what I should assume here. We give them the historicals with some growth rates to help them have a place to start. Integration with our property management software. Again, not only are we linking to the accounting data, but also to all of the operational data that's in our property management software. So number of move-outs, number of move-ins, how many applications did we have in any given month? And we're going back, our data warehouse goes back 10 years. Tapping into trends in terms of whether it's costs or, like I said, applications, move-ins, move-outs. Pick any data point, and we've got it accessible here now so that we can try to make better assumptions and look at the story of the budget more than just trying to get the data into an Excel workbook. We also tapped into our HR software. So in the old days, the property manager had to hand put their property census information. So type the names of the employees, when did they start, when is their review date, so when will they get an increase, what did they make today, what do we think they'll make. It all just comes in from our census, from our HR. So they are looking instead at, okay, yes, John, I think he should get a 3% increase. He's done a really great job, and I want to increase his bonus percentage based on X, Y, Z. It's the thought behind what the budget should look like instead of just trying to get the data in. That was a big piece for us. Changes pushed through the master template to all iterations. This is great. So we have a lot of expenses that are platform-wide, things that are charged to every unit or every property, regardless of the owner. And those items, we get input into a master template, and Jason can just push those out with a click of a button. And if there is a change in that one, he can push, instead of opening 235 budgets, and making the change individually. The other thing is, in the old days, Jason would have to reach out to the regional manager who was over that property and say, oh, can you send me your most recent budget because I have to make a formula. 3 days later, they get the email and send it to him. Oh, I need the password. Can you send me the password so I can revise your budget? And then, definitely there would be cases where they sent them the old budget. Oh, that's not the right one. My boss is reviewing the other one. So just efficiencies, improving a lot of the flow and the workflow. I mentioned the embedded training videos, Canvas specific, geared toward our user groups, fun, encouraging, trying to make the process less of a slog and more of a productive time. The cloud-based interface was extremely important for us. The track changes tool, the chatting ability, being able to check it in, check it out, no more saving on the desktop, all the Excel issues that we've each struggled with, but it was very important. That's why we went all in right at the beginning. We need this to be cloud-based. Let's make sure we handle that day one. And then the nice thing also is, because of the nature of Quantrix, we can take the budget that's completed and push all those GL codes and their forecasts back into our property management accounting software. So the efficiencies there can't be minimized. It's a huge time saver for everybody, especially Jason, and we're happy about that. So this is an example of one of our finished reports. It's beautiful. It's so neat and tidy. We don't, I just love to look at it. It doesn't have, you know, it doesn't look like a workbook. It doesn't have the yellow inputs. It doesn't have the brown, don't use that row. And thank you to Valerie for helping us with this, because we had a very quick turnaround on this. So we relied heavily on Val and her expertise in helping us set it up and get it in a format that we can use. And then buttons so that we can print it. One of the challenges that I wanted to mention to everybody in our circumstance, we have a lot of institutional investors. We have a lot of mom and pop investors. We have the 14 active funds, like I mentioned. And we have third-party management companies where we're just managing for them, but we don't own their property. We still need, in that world that we're working with, we're going to present the budgets in the cloud. We'll do webinar or WebExes, GoToMeetings or whatever to present and talk through the budget, or we'll do it in person, but have it up on a screen in the cloud. They still want a PDF that they can print out and put in their reports or put in their file. They still want an Excel version that they can put into their software and load into their asset management software if that company happens to use an outside asset manager. So that's one of the pieces that we were trying to avoid, but then realized our clients aren't there yet. We still need to have the output piece. So we did have to generate a couple reports that we can then print out either into Excel or into a PDF to share when we're not using the cloud after the budget's been approved. All right, so this page, remember the page I showed that had the 34 data inputs for 2 GL codes, and it had the yellow and the brown. It was all messy. This is what replaced that, and we've got cool pictures and that kind of thing, but this is for our capital investment assumptions. And this is a tough one, and it was kind of near and dear to my heart to fix it. Again, property managers are very good at managing their properties, the day-to-day, managing to a budget, making sure their income and expenses hit target, that kind of thing. Keeping residents happy, managing all their staff. There's so much that goes into that level. But they are not accountants. And so some properties are GAAP, some properties are tax. You might have a regional manager that has a mix of both. And one of the issues that we had was every year, without fail, of course, you'd have errors where something was budgeted in the wrong code. So then for the rest of the year, you have a variance to budget because the budget was wrong. And just due to scalability, we don't go back and revise our budgets. We, at this point, just address the variance. So it was frustrating for everybody because the number might be right, but it's in the wrong place, and it makes things look off. So what we did is say, okay, let's just get the capital policy for every owner, and let's figure out for our GAAP owners, what is their capitalization policy, and what items should be expensed, what items should be capitalized, and how do they go about that. And we built in a form, a Q&A, where you choose what kind of work are you going to do, how many of them do you need to do, and what is the cost. And then it takes you through a list of questions, and yes or no, and then it'll lead you through a flow chart of the right questions, and then it tells the accountant, okay, this needs to be booked in this GL code, and it puts it there for them. So they just have to think about, this is what I need to spend money on, and make sure that concept is in the budget, but the budget will put the number where it belongs. And that's pretty exciting for us. Okay. So a couple things I wanted to mention. So challenges that we faced. One was the learning curve, and I want to give a big thank you to the Quantrix team. Mike, Shane, and the cloud team that have been just such a huge help for us because we had to learn so quickly. A lot of budgets, a lot of people waiting on us. We've got deadlines with owners, and we were able to bring it to market, so to speak, in the right time frame. But we've learned that we still have a long ways to go to stop thinking like spreadheads and start thinking like Quantrix. And so the 2019 enhancements that we plan to make will be focused on making it work more like Quantrix can instead of how Excel did. And that's a big piece for us. We can use it so much better. It's a huge improvement. The feedback we're getting is very positive. It's more efficient, fewer inputs. It allows for more time to think about the story behind your property and the story behind your budget and what you want to be presenting to the owner when you review the budget, and less time just getting the data in there. So the review process will go more smoothly. We'll be able to cut down on that budget camp time, and when it finally comes to the owner, they can be talking about plans rather than errors in the budget. Scalability, like I said, we have nearly, if not over, 300 users. And so the cloud, the great thing about the cloud is that we're not having user issues with the cloud. They're finding it very easy to maneuver through there. We've got perspectives set up so certain job titles can see certain things and they can't see other things, so we can protect certain information. So the cloud has worked out great, and we are seeing the efficiencies. But we're just trying to work through maximizing the efficiency with the number of people that we need to have on the system at any given time. And then I think the last thing, and I need to brainstorm with Mike and the team about it, is we're still struggling a little bit with needing a parent-child relationship between the master template and the 235 individual property budgets. Because each property does have unique things about it where we can't just do the same assumptions for every property and have that be their template. It just doesn't work that way, whether it's the municipality they're located in or the debt structure that they have or the way their waterfall for distributions works. There's just so many pieces that are individual to a property. We haven't figured out a way, and if anybody thinks of a great way, I'd love to hear it. A great way to have a template that we can make formula changes in that will feed back through to the 235 easier when we have so many property-specific issues to deal with. So that's it. Are there any questions?